All right, everyone, welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to be having a look at the Microsoft Excel, Chapter 3. This is entitled Charts, and this is for CSIS 1190, Excel for Business. And what I want to do in this lecture today is go over what the learning objectives of Chapter 3, which is focusing almost primarily on the visualization of data. And this is such an important thing that we can do in Excel, and such an important thing for students to actually delve a little deeper into how they can do this, why are they doing this, and what benefits they can get out of visualization of data. So in the chapter in your book, they give some examples of different types of charts. You can see here there's a bar chart, what they call a bar chart, and this one, a second one, is a pie chart, and this is a bar chart with a moving average on it, or there's other tools that we can use to visualize data. So we visualize data, and we want to visualize data in a chart form to summarize or to kind of understand what the data is telling us. What's the story here with the data? So it's so important because when we look at just raw numbers, sometimes it doesn't help us get a clear picture. For example, we're going to be looking at, this is the today's example in our class that we're going to be building, and this is a portfolio, what they call stock portfolio. And I've selected this example to try to encourage students to go through and try this, because I think that everyone can benefit by understanding what a stock portfolio is and how Excel can help in managing a stock portfolio. So if you're in finance, this is definitely a really good example. If you want to build your own stock portfolio, let's say when you guys start working and you have an RRSP, that's the Registered Retirement Savings Plan, that you can invest your money into stocks yourself and track it and find out what it's doing, and basically build more wealth and control that a lot easier. But the point I'm trying to make here is that when you're looking at data, it's just a bunch of numbers, and you have to sort of look carefully at each data point to sort of understand what it is. So you see here is stock portfolio. Okay, you're looking at a list of stocks. Okay, that makes kind of sense. And then the price of those stocks. Okay, well, that makes sense. And then you're looking at how many shares of each one of those you bought, and so on. And then maybe down here at the bottom in green, you say, oh, okay, well, it says I've made profit, and the total of all of these, I made $5,000. Okay, that's giving me some information, but you're actually looking at data very granularly, individually. It's not really painting a picture, a summary. And that's what we want to do in Chapter 3, is go through and how do you visualize data? Management loves this because you're summarizing it up. And there's nothing better that when you have data at work and you come up with a clever way to visualize that data. People really like this. All right, and it also can help sell a message that you're also trying to do with the data. All right, so what we're going to do in this class is I'll show a few examples of how we can visualize data. So over here on the right-hand side of this example is the stock portfolio, and we're going to start off with a pie chart right here, and it distributes it. And by looking at this now, what this is going to do is going to take this data over here on the left, and it's going to visualize it in a pie chart. And people can look at this a lot easier. People like looking at colors and distributions and breakdowns, because people look at data differently than a computer does. A computer loves numbers, but we don't think like that. We like to see things in a more visual way. So when you look at this, it's a different way of representing the data visually. And you can see here that your largest, right away, if you take a look at this information, I want to know, well, where's most of my money invested? I have to really study this, look carefully, figure out, go into current down here, and I found this one over here. So by looking at this, it shows you in a proportional way of how much money you've got invested in your portfolio by using this pie chart. And there's different ways we can do this and display it. Like I could actually put these numbers inside of each of these, or I could build a legend here. Those kind of subtleties is really up to you on how you can do that. So the better you are at building these and looking at the data to visualize it, it's just overall, it's just a better tool to be able to do. Now, I find a lot of students have used Excel and may have basically used some of the graphing features, but we're going to delve into this a little bit further in this chapter. and try to really dig into what we can do with the data. Now that's a pie chart. Now another chart we're going to do is a bar chart. And this bar chart is a profit distribution. How much money are you making and which stock is making you the most money? You might want to say a question, because what you should be looking at when the data is asking questions, and the graphs should help reflect what that question or to answer that question. So a question might be, what stock is making me the most money? And maybe that's going to help you make decisions in the future. Maybe you're going to sell some of that stock because you made a lot of profit. Maybe you want to buy more of that stock because it's making a profit. So these are big questions. And by looking at this data on its own, that's hard to see. That's a hard question to see, because you've got to basically understand all the data, say, okay, the price, the shares, like cost, the current, the profit. Okay, is the profit, and then look down. Okay, well, GameStop, looks like I'm losing money. And then Apple, I didn't make hardly any profit. Oh, okay, I found it. It's 3,004. Okay, so there you go. If you don't visualize data, then you're going to have to spend more time in your own head looking and tracking and trying to find it. But when you do a graph like this, you can see very clearly that Coca-Cola, in this case, is a very clear winner here. Now, this graph here, I think when I did it, I had a different stock list. As you can see here, I only have Netscape, or sorry, not Netscape. Netflix was a loss, but I've made an extra purchase, and you can see here that the visualization needs to be updated. So we'll definitely do that, because I'm losing money on GameStop, and it should be showing right here as GameStop is a red right there. All right, so let's get started. I think the way to get started here is I'm going to get you guys, and I hope you're following along and trying this out. And I really encourage you guys to just open up this YouTube video lecture and watch it on your phone, and then hit the pause and then type in the data and follow along and actually build these as we're going through. So hopefully you'll be building these in with me as we've been going through this. All right, so let's get started by typing in these right here. So I think what I'll do, and to make this a little more user-friendly here, is I'm going to create let me just move my stuff around a bit. Start with a blank sheet. Perfect. And again, when you have a blank sheet, something you might want to do is name it. So I'm going to go down here, just call this my portfolio. All right. And you guys can name this, put your name on it, put the date. I do this myself. I keep track of my my portfolio. I like to do this and track it accurately. It's kind of interesting, especially when you know how to do it in Excel. All right, and then from here, I'm going to simply just come up with some stocks that I want to try. Now, I'm going to see here. I'm going to just type in some. Oh, can't see underneath there. I'm going to paste and then paste special, and I just want the basic names. There we go. Now, when you guys do this, you could type in something like GameStop, type in Apple, Alphabet, Facebook, and so on. What that's going to do, it's going to be able to connect you with an online database. So let me just start that again. I'm just going to back out of there, and I'm going to start off with the first one. Just type in GameStop. Okay. Push enter. Drop down. Let's type in Apple. Enter. And so on. Alphabet, Facebook. So go in, type these in. Netflix and Coca-Cola. I think it's just I think it's cola, and I think it's like that. All right, now I'm gonna have to turn this one off. Oh, if you get this, what's happening is I've actually got a dynamic link to my data to the stock market. And this is a really cool feature I thought I'd show you guys, since it's part of this little example here, is that I can take this one stock right here and grab the stock data. Now, if I'm doing this on my own and I don't have dynamic data, I would have to go into something like Yahoo and find that data individually. So let's say I could go into Yahoo Finance, and I could type in GameStop, and I could find out what GameStop is currently trading at. But you can see here that the stock changes prices almost every second. You can see it just changed right there. So it's 255.19. And in a few seconds, it'll change again. This is just a free web one, so it doesn't update. I think it updates every, I'm not sure what the update cycle is. But you'll see here that this will change. Hopefully I'll get that in the next second or two. All right, well, it doesn't look like it's changed right now. It will as we go through this for sure. Okay, so let's go back in here. And what I want to do is convert all of these. So once you type them in, and by the way, I moved it down here a bit so I could have a title in there. And I'm going to select all this and go up into the tab here called Data. And under Data, there's something here called Data Types. And Data Types is a new feature that they put in 2019, I believe, and it adds in multiple databases for specific areas or industries. This is a very interesting area, but today we're going to just look at stocks. But if you ever want to know what the current currency is, or data about geographical places, this one's great. So if I just click on stocks right here, what the computer does is it goes in and it does a search for GameStop, and it actually connects it to the New York Stock Exchange. That's what NX, X means exchange, New York stocks. And it comes up with a symbol GME. GME is the symbol for GameStop. AAPL is for Apple. Now, Alphabet didn't pop up, which is very unusual because Alphabet is one of the largest NASDAQ stocks out there. And it's probably because, did I spell it right? I spelt it correctly. So what I could do is over here is I can narrow that gap. And you can see here that this is Alphabet Inc. at the NASDAQ called Google, because Alphabet is actually the stock or the company name for Google. So I'm going to select this one, and that will convert it and make it all better. All right, so there we go. There's the stocks, and they're dynamically connected. Now, once I've done that, I want to know what the price of the stock is. So I'm going to do price. And since I'm here, let's go in here and type in the titles that I had. And let's say shares. How many shares did I buy? And then we have something here called the cost per share. I want to know how much I paid per share at the time. All right. And also the cost, the current value, current value, the current dollars, and how much profit did I make on this. So these are some basic fields. Now, some of these fields are data driven, so it's brought in by the computer. Some of these are constants at the time I purchased it, and so on. So let's go through these individually. Now, to get started, I want to know what the current price is. I could go to my website and say, okay, well, let's see, GameStop is now at this price right here, dropped 10 cents since the last time we looked at it. And I could just paste it right into that spot right there. But it's a static price. It's only available, it's only good for the time of this recording, and it changes every few seconds. So this is really not a good way for the data point to collect it. So I'm going to take that out. Now, the other way to do it is by selecting on the stock itself, and this little pop-up gives me all of these inserted data points that I can collect. And these are all the different stock data I can draw on, and the one I want is price. So I want to know what the price is, and sure enough, the current price is 253.979. Now that looks a little different than the one I just had. So let's just go back here, and it looks like there's a bit of a disconnect, which is weird because normally these are very connected. So I have to look into that. I'm not sure why that just did that, but could be there's a lag between either this system or the other system. But by end of day, it should be pretty good. All right, from there, I want to copy this down, and it will bring all the prices in for each of those stocks. Now, let's assume for a moment that I bought 10 shares. Now, 10 is an actual constant. I actually bought, this is hypothetical. I don't own these, but let's say I bought 10 shares. That's not going to change. So definitely want to type it in as a fixed number. Now, Apple, let's say about 20 of those. I bought 5 at 10, 10, and 20 shares. All right. Now, the second thing I have to do is type in what was my cost per share when I bought it. And that's, again, another constant. Let's say I paid $295, and this is in US dollars, so keep that in mind. And then from here, Apple, let's say I paid 121, and let's say I paid 21.21 for And just type in these numbers. If you type in these numbers, all your calculations will be the same as mine. All right, now cost, you got to figure out what the cost. Now, what is my cost? Now, I could type it in as a constant, or I could use my Excel to calculate for me. It's a formula. So this one's dynamic data. This is static, and this is a formula. So let's go in and calculate a formula. So formulas, of course, is equal to, and it doesn't really matter which one you do. Let's say we want to do the number of shares multiplied by the share cost. And that means I spent, hypothetically, $2,950 for that one stock. All right, I'm going to double click that, copy it down the page. And let's go with, what is the current value? Now the current value is another formula. So it's equal to how many shares I own multiplied by the actual dynamic cost of the stock's value at the present time. So you can see here, calculates it out at 25.37, which just by looking at it, you can see I'm losing money on GameStop, which a lot of people have lost money on GameStop. So what I really want to know is, how much money am I making? Am I making money? Is it making profit? All right, well, how do you calculate that? How am I going to calculate the profit of this? Well, profit is based on how much it's currently worth. What's it worth today? What's the current value minus what you paid for it in the past? So I'm going to go with equal to, and how much is it currently worth, minus how much is the cost of that stock. Okay, there it is. So I've lost $412 at the time of this recording. And I'm going to double click that and increase my columns here. All right, so it looks like things are not looking good just at a cursory look here. And I'm just wondering if I've got some incorrect data, which I think I do, which is Coca-Cola. I think what happened with Coca-Cola is they did a split. Looks like they did a split since I've done my my first data, which wasn't that long ago. It looks like Coca-Cola is $56. So it looks like they did an 8-to-1 split. So I'll have to just type in 20 times 8, and that should modify it slightly. No, that's not what I want. The number of shares, hold on a second. Let me just pause the video. All right, figured it what the problem was. All right, the problem was my symbol that I had put in originally for Coca-Cola was different than this symbol right here. So it was a totally different stock. So my data was correct. It's just that I wasn't paying enough attention to make sure that the stock symbol was the right one. There's a lot of stocks out there for the same company. They have different types of shares, different stocks that are posted. And when I just let the computer check it for me, it was incorrect. So good lesson, never trust what the computer does. Always double check that these are correct. All right, so that's looking a little bit better. We got the correct price. We got 20 shares. The cost per share was $260. So there we are. We're getting back on track. All right, so that's what we've got now. If it was me and I was doing this for my own self, I would probably add another field in here, which would be for date, and the date would be when I purchased it. And why that is important is because we can calculate the dates of when I purchased it to the current date into the future, and I can do calculations on how much that stock has made me over that period of time. And that's another really, really good piece of data. And so this is a good point for all of you to consider, is that there's more data points sometimes that we could put in that will give us more information. So if you want, I could put this in, and you guys can either add it or not, but this is a good feature on how to calculate dates. So let me just go in, pause the video, and I'll put some dates in here. So for the sake of the brevity of this video, I just put in the beginning of the year, January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, just hypothetical dates for this one right here. And what I can do now is I could expand this and add another column here for the current date. All right, the current date. So the current date is what we are today. If I just went into equal to today and I used the function, it would just tell me that at the time of this recording, it would be June 4th of 2021. And we've got the two dates. But that's not really helping me a whole lot. I want to know what the difference is between these two. So I can do a calculation that's basically taking today's date and subtracting it from when I purchased it. And when I push enter, it comes up with the date format, but you know that we can change the format to just a number. And there's been 154 days since I purchased that stock, which is very useful information because this is basically telling me how many days I've been invested in this particular stock. And that will also help me calculate what my ROI, my return on my investment per annum would be. So there's all sorts of additional data that I can develop. I want just to throw that one in there because the example there is you can generate more information, but you got to think about it. What other information? So if you think these three here, the date, the cost, and the shares, okay, are fixed. These are numbers you can see up here. They're just raw data. This is a calculation. This is raw data. So this one, and this one, I'm just going to highlight these, and I can color code them. I'll say that they're just a light green here, is fixed data. This is data that doesn't change. But all the other data, this is dynamic data. Okay, we're getting this from the internet. This data right here is a formula. This data is a formula combined with a function. And this one here is a formula and another formula. So you can see how it starts building up. All right, so from here, we want to maybe just do a quick format. These look good. Costs per share, of course, this would be in dollars, so I'll put that in as dollars. Having the decimal place is probably important because most stocks come in using pennies. The cost, again, I would probably want to do that in, again, the cost and so on. So these ones are all cost. I'll just do this as a group. All right, there we go. And we can clean this up a little bit as well. Take that top line and let's say line it to the right and bold it. Maybe put a line under it just to separate it from the rest right there. Good. So we got that. Now that's the detailed data. So that's a great step. Now what we want to look at as summative data. Summative data is summarizing a block of data and looking at its total amount. So you have to ask yourself, does it make sense? So if you look at this data right here, if I was to go back up and say, okay, let's just sum it, auto sum it and enter, does it make sense? Does this tell me any useful information? $4,088.79. That's the total amount of shares if I bought individual shares. That data really makes no sense. So it's useless. It might look good, but it's useless data. And that's important because there's a lot of times people do put data in calculations that make no sense. Okay, let me ask you this question. If I was going to take this data right here and I was going to take all the individual, like how many shares I bought of each of these stocks right here, is there any aggregate calculation that I can make that would make this any sense? Would it make sense to summarize? So you're thinking to yourself, and I bought 165 shares. Well, maybe. Okay, is it important to know how many shares? Well, it doesn't have any real relative context. It doesn't mean that we can do a calculation because these are all different values for each of those shares. So again, that doesn't really make sense either. Could you average? Can you average? Well, I guess, that could tell us that on average, I own 27.5 shares of each stock. But again, that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So there's not really a whole lot of aggregate information we can do with those two columns. The cost per share, again, same problem. How about this one? How much, or what's the cost? What do you think we should do here? Should we do a summary again, or should we average it? What's the aggregate calculation we should make for this particular one? All right, give you a second, and the answer is, well, sum it. Okay, we want to know, and this one here is probably really important. In fact, that number right there tells us how much money we have currently invested in the stock market. So the question is somebody might ask, how much money is invested in this portfolio? And the answer is $55,475. That very important number. In fact, that you could almost highlight it, color code it, because it's that important. All right, the dates. Well, again, that's not really there's no aggregate information we can develop from this one. Well, the date. Sorry, I blew it on that one. That should have been just the number of days with no decimal places. The current value, okay, again, this is very important because you want to know how much money you're worth today. So someone says, well, how much do you have in your portfolio? Well, your portfolio would be added up here. Again, this is another very important number right there. That's how much money you're currently worth today. So in fact, this is probably one of the most important numbers. Your profit, again, would be another great number. So I'm highlighting these because these numbers right here are super important. All right, and then from there, I could probably put in some kind of a formatting option here to make it look a little bit better. And there we go. We have a basic stock portfolio that we can track dynamically every day, every trading day that we want. And we can see how much profit we have that we've made. And we can say what we've made over that particular time. I guess with time, we could almost average this out. How much time have we been on average in the market? So I would say that we could or might be able to use average right here. I'm just thinking about this. And we could say I've been in the market 152 days on average to make $8,484. So that one right there might have some value to it. If someone said, well, how long have you been in the market? Well, on average, roughly 152 days. But that's not quite accurate because I've got stocks I purchased even longer and earlier. But on average, it's about that much. If you have to summarize it down to one question. All right, so that gives you a pretty good idea about how to build a basic stock portfolio using Microsoft Excel, using the data tool here for stocks. And again, if you guys want, you can also do things like what is the Canadian dollar to the US dollar? This is a really good calculation. And it's a calculation we should actually have here because all these numbers are in USD. So we would like to actually have this number right here. So I'm going to pick that up. I'll move it up over here for the time being. And I'm going to say, let's find out what the current price is. So the Canadian dollar today at the time of this recording is worth 0.83. If you want to know what the USD is to the Canadian dollar or any currency, so it doesn't matter if you want to know what the Thai baht is or the Japanese yen or the Chinese yuan or the Mexican peso, all you have to do is put in the currency pairs together and select the data currency and go ahead and select price. All right, that's the number we want is 1.21 cents. So in fact, this number right here is in USD. And if you're actually in another country and you want to know what the Canadian value is, we could even say something like, what is the Canadian profit? And get that information. All right, how do we calculate that? Well, we have to use an absolute referencing for this. Now, you guys might remember from the previous chapter that absolute referencing is by taking a relative reference and multiplying it by an absolute reference. Now, that absolute reference right here, we want to put in a dollar sign for the column and a dollar sign for the row. So that basically locks it in. And once I've done that, it does the calculation. So unfortunately, because I lost $412 US, that translates to $497 Canadian. Now, if I copy that down once, it works. And it works because I'm taking this relative amount here and I'm multiplying it by this absolute cell right here. Those dollar signs act like a padlock. It locks the column, it locks the row, and that's how it works. And it gets that one cell right there. So I can just double click this or drag it down the page and I can come up with all of that information. Now, something I might want to try here is I like this format here and I want to put that format over there. So a little trick here you can do is you can highlight that format and go to this tool here under Home called Let's Paint the format that I've selected, and let's paint it with a paintbrush over here. And it makes it the same. So it saves a lot of time in formatting. All right, so we got the number. What I'm really interested in is my portfolio as of today. On average, 152 days, I've made $10,000 in this portfolio. And that's a dynamic calculation. All right, so just going to highlight all those columns and double click here, and that'll self-adjust everything to fit. All right, so now what I want to do is go in and visualize the data. Visualizing data means you got to take this information and you've got to look for the data points that you want to represent. So I really like this Canadian value right here. Since we're in Canada and these are all American stocks, they have to be purchased with US dollars, but I want to translate that into Canadian dollars, and that's what I want to visualize. what I'm going to start off with is a pie chart. A pie chart is a great way of visualizing data when you're looking at a complete 100% of something. Like a pie is 100% of the pie, and then how is that pie divided? So you can see it's divided here and so on. How is it broken down? All right, so from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the data points that I want to visualize. All right, so what I want to visualize is I want to list all of these stocks, and I want to summarize them in a very, just all I want is a single data point here of my Canadian profit. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to select all of this right here. And does that make sense? Does it make sense to have a minus piece of the pie? Does it make sense to have a minus, Netflix in this? When you're first learning how to develop a visualization, you could try something and it might look good at first, but it may turn out in the end, it doesn't make sense or it's not valuable. So that's my profit. But what do I really want to look at is, maybe how much did I initially invest in this portfolio? So let's have a look at which data points. And the data point I want is what my current value is. Now this is the current USD. So we could do another column here. I guess that's why I'm hesitating. I'm looking for another column here. And I'm looking for, this is the USD. I should almost label these US current. And the other one here is the Canadian. There we go. Now I'm back on track. The Canadian current dollars. There we go. Now, how do I get into my Canadian current dollars? Well, I have to take my USD and multiply it by this. So let's do another absolute reference. It's equal to my relative. That's because the answer here is relative to this, but I want to multiply it by the absolute USD number here. Now, a little trick here is if you push the function key F4 will automatically lock that column. In fact, if you push F4 again, it locks just the row. If you push it again, it locks just the column. You push it again, it takes off the reference and makes it relative again. So I'm going to push F4, lock it in. There we go. All right. And then I'm going to drop it down. Okay. So there we go. And from there, we can just, I'm going to just grab this and slide it over. There we go. So I know that's a great number now because I know how much I have in my portfolio overall. I've got $77,000 in value in this portfolio. I've made $10,000 in profit. Now we can visualize this in a pie chart. Pie chart would be taking all my stocks. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select all my stock symbols here, and I want to select all of these. Now, how do I select two separate ranges? Well, I have to hold the control key down. So hold the control key down and highlight and match those up. Make sure you don't add an extra one or above it. Now, this just shows you sort of a clear cell here because that's at the start of the range. Right, now that we've done that, let's go and insert a pie chart. Now, pie charts can be added under the Insert tab at the top, under the Charts, and we've got a whole variety of way of visualizing data. So this is really where this chapter is going, and this is where you want to spend your time in looking at data. Now, you can hit Recommended Charts, and this is Excel using what they call the artificial intelligence to come up with different ways of visualizing data. And this is a great tool. So what they've done is they take the data that you've selected and they put it down in here. This is a horizontal bar chart right here, which is kind of neat because it shows you here examples of how it would look. This is the bar chart. This is the pie chart that I was talking about. All right. And you may want one of these, or you might want to just go in and pick your own. You can go back up to here and say, okay, I want a 2D pie chart. And if you roll over, it should actively just pop up with the values right here. All right. So it looks like I could pick, I prefer the 2D pie chart, and the reason is it's the most clear chart without distortions. For example, if I use this one right here, I'm getting a three-dimensional perspective. That means that that little bit of data, that little orange and bright blue piece that is off on an angle, and it could skew the results. It may look actually smaller than it actually is. So when you look at something from a 2D point of view, you're going to get everything in proportion. So that's why I like the 2D pie chart, is right there. So when I select it, there you go. I've got the pie chart. And now if the pie chart comes up pretty tiny, comes up with the title at the top. It's got a pie chart here. and it's got a table index right here. And once I click on the pie chart, you'll notice that I'm no longer on my insert, but I've come up with, there's two more ribbons. Two ribbons dedicated strictly to the charting tools. So the chart design allows me to, modify the chart by adding titles, modifying the layout. And this is a great tool right here. That's why I want to show it to you. And this basically dynamically shows you how you can visualize the chart. And I'm pretty sure that the book will go through, show you this, and in the testing system, they'll also practice this as well. So you can go through here and see which one you like the best. And I think layout number 6 is the one I selected, but you can go through, layout 7, it might have been layout 7. So let's just try it. Let's click on layout 7, and sure enough, it changed it to this right here. And right away, if you look at this, it looks like Facebook has got this massive amount of profit right here. Oop, let me just move this over. And I'm just wondering why, because it's 4,000 and it looks like the cost, I think, what was the original? Okay. Looks like I made a typo. Look at this. So I could never see that typo if I was just looking at this. I didn't realize I even made the typo. Some of you might have said, hey, Ryan, you typed in the wrong number here for shares. But I didn't realize it until I visualized the data and I said, wow, Facebook has over 50% of my portfolio. That's not right. Why is that? Well, the price is correct. How many shares? I only bought 10 shares, not 100. I wish I would have bought 100 shares, but I only bought 10. So I'm going to change that back to 10. And right away, it changes the visualization and it says, looks a lot better than what it used to be right there. All right, so there's another good example of using charts is to help visualize that data to make sure it's accurate. And again, accuracy in your data is just absolute. Without accuracy, this just doesn't work. So that's a great little tool right there. All right, so from here, this becomes an object. The chart becomes an object. You can pick it up, you can move it around. So let me just move it over here. Or actually, maybe I'll just keep it over here so it's all on one page. And you can scale it. And oops, I'm going to just grab the corner. Yeah, you got to make sure you grab the right ones. There we go. Let's see here. And all right, there, that looks a little better. Let me just zoom it out. You can zoom it here on the bottom left-hand corner. You can use your control and your mouse to do that as well. And you got to be careful when you do that. Sometimes the fonts don't fit within the column. All right, so from here, if you want to go back to the chart tools, you have to select the chart and back up here, chart design. And again, we've got the different styles. So these are the layouts of how you can organize the different parts of the chart. And then the style has a variety of different templates, as you've seen with other, with doing the font styles. And we've got more here with the pull down. So I don't really like any of those. So I'm just going to, you can just, let's see here. I'm going to go back. Actually, that one looked pretty good right there. The nice thing about this is it shows you a percentage breakdown. And if you look at this, this is important because the chart is actually generating additional information that I didn't put in my original data set. And that is the percentage of each stock in the portfolio. So what this is telling me is that Google, I have 36% of my portfolio in Google. That's a very important question. And as you guys learn a particular industry, like if you guys are in finances and you're looking at portfolio management, it's very important to know that what percentage of a particular industry or stock do you have in your overall portfolio. It's a lot of times they talk about, diversifying your portfolio and having a evenly distributed to help reduce risk and so on. So what the chart is doing is adding additional data. Now I could have actually calculated that data by adding it into my spreadsheet, right? I could have just simply gone in and selected where I want to put my distribution and actually calculated that. Now that's a good thought problem. So if I was to ask you guys on a test, which I think you guys do get asked this question, is what percentage of that particular stock is in your portfolio? Well, you first of all have to look at, well, for example, with GameStop, I've got $3,064 currently. How do I calculate that particular percentage? Well, the percentage is basically taking this amount of my GameStop and divided by the total amount of money I have invested. Okay, that sounds good. So I'm going to go equal to the amount of stock that I have divided by the total. But remember, the total has to be the same for all of these. So the total is, again, it's absolute. So I'm going to push the F4 to lock that in. Let me just try it without the F4 and just show you what happens if I don't do this. If I put it in like this, it shows up as 7%. All right, let me just change this to percentage so that we get this. All right, and if I copy this down, watch what happens. A divided by 0 error occurs. And the reason for that is because when I copied this from here and I copied it down one cell to here, it relatively drops this one correctly, but it then takes the total and drops it down relative. It's keeping things in relative. So I don't want that. I always want the I8 to be the answer here. So I'm going to go back to my original one, and I8 I want to make absolute. So I'm going to take that and push F4 and lock it in. Got it. All right, now I can just double click it and I'm good to go. Now, always recommended to check your formulas and functions whenever possible. I know if I highlight all this, it should equal what amount? It should equal 100% or decimal 1. So if I highlight all of this right here and I go down here, it says the sum is 100%. Perfect. I know that the distribution here is accurate. So these numbers here should reflect here. So how much GameStop do I have? According to this number, it says 7%, but in fact, it's 7.4%. If you want it to be really accurate. Do I have to total this up, down here? No. Because if you want to check your math, that's a great way to do it, but I would personally leave it up there. I would take that out. But this again is very good data to have. You can see how I'm adding more value. I'm adding more information with the existing data that I had here. And that is so important. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to look for more data that you can develop from the existing data. If you think about it, all we've really done is we had the price data coming in from the computer and the 3 green. That's all the data that I've put in. And all the other data here was calculated through formulas or functions to give me the information. And that's really why Excel is so powerful. And then here, with the visualization, I can see very clearly how my portfolio has been distributed. A lot of times what people do is they don't go through the data. They don't like to look at the data. A lot of management doesn't want to look at the individual numbers a lot of times. They want to look at the bigger picture. And that's what visualizing data does. It allows people to look at the bigger picture to make bigger decisions, the big picture decisions. All right, now let's carry on and let's look at visualizing data even more. Now we have to come up with what kind of data do we want to visualize? What do we want to look at here? So another option is we could just select all the data here, and then go back up into insert and say recommended. And if I did something like that, I'm getting a whole bunch of just nonsense, data that doesn't make sense. I mean, if you look at this, I can't even read that chart. I don't even know what that means. A clustered column means it's clustering together a bunch of elements and then grouping it together. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't explain anything. So you have to be more meaningful when you're visualizing data. Now, in this particular example, I want to know what my stocks are doing, but what do I want to know? Do I want to know what I originally paid for the stocks? Now I could say, okay, let's just try this, take that column, and I'm just going to select this one and this one, go into recommended. And that kind of looks interesting. It tells me how much the stock price was, but it really doesn't give me any usable information. It doesn't really tell me much. It just tells me how much stocks fluctuate amongst themselves. Again, that doesn't make sense. Would it make sense to take all my stocks and break down the shares values? Well, that's almost the same thing. It has a nice looking graph, but it doesn't tell me much. It doesn't contribute to the story of my data. So I don't want that. What I'm really looking for is how much money I made. I want to, portfolio is all about making money. We don't buy portfolios and develop and track all this because we want to lose money. We want to do it because we want to make money. So what are the key points here? What are the key data? Well, my profit in USD or my profit in Canadian would be a good place to start. So I'm going to select my stocks again. And then for my stocks, I'm going to select my profit. And then from there, I want to visualize that. Now we got something that's more interesting. I've got a stock here that says my Coca-Cola, I've made a huge profit. My Alphabet, Google, I made a profit. Oh, my Netflix, I'm down, and my GameStop is down. Now, the way that this is designed isn't really that intuitive. So I don't like that design. This one's a little better. I like that one. But you can see here at the 0 mark, GameStop is showing up as blue and Netflix is still blue. I kind of like this one. This one's a little more complicated because it's showing me what the profit is based on where at the point that I paid. Now, some people like this type of graph, and the more sophisticated you are, you may actually want that graph. Okay, here's your profit again. So you can see instantly where you're making your money. Coca-Cola is the majority of the entire portfolio. And then from there, it's Google. All right, let's move on down. This one here doesn't really explain much. I don't even understand what it's talking about here. And the same as this one, we're not forecasting. Forecasting usually has something to do with time. These are individual data points. It doesn't make sense. All right, so the winner here, I think, is this one. I like this clustered column chart here. I'm going to select that one and put it onto my chart here. And I'm going to stretch it out a little bit more to sort of match up with there. All right, so from here, again, if I click on it, I get my two ribbon tabs right here, the design and my format. So we looked at the design. We could add, different ways of different layouts. And as I move it around here, you can see that it changes. But I'm going to keep the same one that I had. From here, I want to point out the fact that you can individually change the title. Each of these things are objects. So if I go up in here, this whole axis here is a object. This axis right here is an object, and they can be individually manipulated. In fact, you can actually grab the individual data points here and manipulate them if you want. Just like the pie chart, if I wanted to, I could take a pie chart, select the pie chart once, select the pie chart twice, select the actual piece of pie, and I can grab the pie and actually move it out like that. Or I could take the largest and the smallest piece of the pies, just in case I was doing a presentation and I was talking to my shareholders. I can say, well, this one here, Alphabet is the largest. GameStop, or not GameStop, but yeah, GameStop is my smallest amount of investment. All right, so from here, I can go back and I can change this. I can say this is my, my stocks, like that. Oop. And other things I can do individually is I can click on them and even format them. So for example, these ones here should be green. So what I can do is I can select them, and then I can format them, and then I can change the colors. That's one way to do it. You can see it's dynamic, but I don't want Netflix to show green because Netflix is, and this is tricky. I do have trouble with this sometimes. There you go. You see, I have to click it a few times to try to just pull out that one right there. Now I could paint it using this tool here, which is under color, and I get even more color palettes. So there's multiple ways of doing this. If I wanted the individual element to change, I could right click it. Let's see here. I can go, and it's pretty tricky. I got to right click it and go down to fill, and I can say I want that to show up as red. So green means I've made money. Red shows that I am losing money. So GameStop would be another one I've lost money on. So let's go over here and let's see if I can, there you go. Oh, there you go. You can see that you've selected it by the little handles here. And then one more right click on that allows me to change the background fill. It's a bit of a tricky, oh, see that? I didn't even click the right one. I grabbed the whole, let's see here. Boy, it's tough because the name of the stock right here is sitting on top, and they're overlapping. But being a little persistent here, I think I could probably get it. Well, that was a tricky one, because you can see here the title right here is overlapping on exactly that same line. So it took me several attempts to try to get that. It was very problematic. All right, so now what I've got now is a visualization of my stocks and my overall portfolio, like how my stocks are distributed, how much profit I guess I'm making for each one. So you can see here I might want to call that my stock profits would be a better title to that. So when someone first opens up this, one of the first things they're going to be attracted to are the graphs. People, we like colors, we want to see what it is. Our eyes are automatically drawn to this rather than the detailed numbers. So if the title at the top is the stock profits, right away your user is going to see that Coca-Cola is doing well, Google is doing well, GameStop and Netflix are not doing as well. So there is additional visualizations that we can do. This example doesn't have any sort of over time. I mean, we do have a little bit of a time feature right here, but there's nothing that we can really visually graph that would be that meaningful. If we were graphing, for example, your budget over January through December, you could track and see how much your expenses were each month. That might be useful information, and we could trend over a year if your expenses are going up or down. But in this example, all we're looking really at is a summary data, which would be a pie chart, and an individual maybe stacked or a bar chart in this case. Now we could come up with additional ones, and I would encourage you guys to do that. I would say, okay, is there another graph that you guys could come up with that's meaningful in this example? So if you're following along with these examples and you're learning this, I would put the task to you guys. What other types of charts could you do? And I'm looking at a pie chart and or a bar chart, one of those two. What other data sets could you use here to graph? That's really the challenge I would ask you guys to think about and come up with another option. I don't want to come up with one for you guys right now. I want you to think about it and come up with a meaningful piece of data to visualize that we did not do with these two examples here. I want you guys to do. That would be your challenge in this exercise here. So hopefully you guys will take the opportunity, figure that out, and try that. I hope you learned some new features in here, but data visualization using graphs is definitely just such an important feature of Microsoft Excel. And we will be using this throughout the course now. So I encourage you guys to really dig in and learn more about this. There's a lot more. I've only scratched the surface of this with the time that we have. The course, My IT Lab, goes through a lot of really good examples, and they get into these chart formatting areas in more detail, like how to do fills and borders and make it look better, shadowing, putting on different looks, 3D effects. I don't do these in these lectures right here because this is kind of mechanical stuff. I think that people can go through this themselves, but definitely go in and learn more about designing the charts and formatting them. But that's the easy part of this. The hard part is coming up with what should you visualize, what data needs to be selected is really the hard part. That's where you have to put your thinking caps on to come up with those questions to how to visualize. All right. So I'll leave that with you at that point. I hope you guys picked up some new tips, and I will see you in the next lecture.